The wind was howling like a wild beast outside the Chicago Animal Care Center. Dr. David Martinez pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders as he locked the clinic door behind him. It was nearly midnight, and the December storm had been raging for hours. Snow was falling so hard that he could barely see his car parked just 20 feet away. David had stayed late again, something he'd been doing more often these past few months. Work kept his mind busy, and a busy mind meant fewer thoughts about the empty house waiting for him. His colleagues kept telling him to go home earlier, but home felt too quiet without the sound of paws clicking on the hardwood floors. The parking lot was like a sheet of ice. David took careful steps, his breath creating small clouds in the freezing air. His car was covered in at least 6 inches of snow, and he'd have to scrape it all off before he could even think about driving. He pulled out his keys and was about to start cleaning the windshield when he heard it. A soft whimper, so faint that he almost thought he was imagining it. David stopped moving and listened carefully. The wind was loud, and the snow was hitting the ground hard, but there it was again, a weak, desperate sound coming from somewhere behind the building. Any normal person would have ignored it and headed home, but David wasn't normal when it came. 2 animals in trouble? He followed the sound, his shoes crunching through the snow. The whimpering was coming from behind the large garbage containers near the back of the building. David pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The bright light cut through the darkness, and that's when he saw her. A dog was curled up in a tight ball, pressed against the brick wall. Her fur was matted and dirty, and she was shaking so hard that her whole body was trembling. David could see that she was some kind of mixed breed, probably with German Shepherd in her. But what broke his heart was how thin she was. Her ribs were showing through her fur, and her eyes looked tired and hopeless. "Hey there, girl," David said softly, crouching down but keeping his distance. "What are you doing out here in this weather?" The dog lifted her head slightly. Her eyes met his, and David felt something twist in his chest. Those eyes held so much pain and fear, but also something else. "Hope maybe." She opened her mouth slightly, and a small puff of warm air escaped, like she was trying to speak. David had been working with animals for over 10 years, but he'd never seen anything quite like this. The dog wasn't barking or growling. She was just looking at him with those big, dark eyes, and somehow he could almost hear what she was thinking. "You're hurt, aren't you?" David whispered, noticing the dark stain on the snow near her front. "Paw. And you're so cold." The dog tried to move closer to him, but David could see that her right front leg wasn't working properly. She was dragging it behind her, and with each movement, she left a small trail of blood in the snow. David's heart was racing. This dog was in serious trouble. She was clearly suffering from the cold. She was injured, and who knew how long she'd been out here without food or water. But there was something else that made him pause. Taking care of another dog felt like betraying the memory of Max, his German Shepherd who had passed away 6 months ago. Max had been David's best friend for 8 years. They'd done everything together: morning runs, weekend camping trips, lazy Sunday afternoons, watching movies. When Max got sick, David had spent thousands of dollars trying to save him. But sometimes love isn't enough, and David had to say goodbye to his best friend in this very clinic. Since then, David had thrown himself into work. He helped other people's animals, but he couldn't bring himself to have another dog of his own. It felt wrong somehow, like he was trying to replace Max. But looking at this shivering, injured dog, David couldn't just walk away. This wasn't about replacing Max. This was about saving a life. "Okay, girl," David said, slowly reaching into his coat pocket. "I'm going to help you, but you need to trust me." The dog watched his every movement. David pulled out a small treat from his pocket, something he always carried out of habit from his days with Max. He held it out to her. Instead, she just kept looking at him with those pleading eyes. David moved a little closer. "I know you're scared. I know you don't know me, but I'm not going to hurt you, I promise." The storm was getting worse. Snow was falling harder, and the wind was picking up. David knew that if he left this dog here, she might not survive the night. The temperature was dropping fast, and with her injury, she couldn't move around to keep warm. "I can't leave you here," David said, more to himself than to the dog. I just can't." He took off his warm winter coat and slowly approached the dog. She tensed up, ready to run if needed, but she didn't move away. David could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted help, but she was too scared to trust. "It's okay," David said softly. "I'm just going to wrap you up and get you somewhere warm." As David gently placed his coat around the dog, she did something unexpected. She looked up at him, and in a voice so quiet it was almost like a whisper, she let out a small whine that sounded almost like words. Like she was asking him a question. David's hands stopped moving. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The snow kept falling, the wind kept howling, but all David could hear was that soft, desperate sound. And somehow, he understood exactly what she was asking. The choice was his to make. David made his decision in that moment. Couldn't leave her there to suffer. Gently, he wrapped his warm coat around the shivering dog and carefully lifted her into his arms. She was so light that it scared him. She probably weighed half of what a healthy dog her size should weigh. "Come on, girl," David whispered as he carried her to his car. "Let's get you somewhere safe." The dog didn't struggle. Instead, she pressed herself closer to his chest, seeking his warmth. David could feel her heart beating fast against his shirt, and her whole body was still trembling. He managed to unlock his car with one hand and gently placed her on the passenger seat, making sure his coat stayed wrapped around her. The drive to his house took longer than usual because of the storm. David kept glancing over at the dog, worried she might try to jump out or panic. But she just sat there, looking out the window with those sad, tired eyes. Every few minutes, she would look at him, as if checking to make sure he was still there. "Almost home," David said softly. "Just hang on a little longer." When they finally reached his house, David carried her inside and went straight to his living room. He grabbed every blanket he could find and made a soft bed near the fireplace. The dog watched his every move, but she didn't try to run or hide. David knelt down beside her and slowly unwrapped his coat. In the warm light of his living room, he could see just how bad her condition really was. Her fur was matted with mud and snow, her ribs were clearly visible, and her right front paw was bleeding more than he'd realized. There were also several small cuts on her face and legs. "Oh, sweetheart," David said quietly. "What happened to you?" The dog looked at him with those big dark eyes. David had always believed that animals could communicate in ways humans didn't fully understand. And right now, he felt like she was trying to tell him her story. David went to his kitchen and filled a bowl with fresh water. He also opened a can of the dog food he still had from Max's time. He'd been meaning to donate it, but somehow never got around to it. Maybe this was why. When he returned to the living room, the dog was still lying on the blankets, but she was watching him carefully. David placed the water bowl near her head and held out some food in his hand. "You must be hungry," he said gently. "When's the last time you ate?" The dog sniffed the food but didn't eat it. David wasn't surprised. Scared and hurt animals often refused food even when they were starving. He placed the food on a plate near her and sat down on the floor a few feet away. "I'm not going anywhere," David told her. "Take your time." For the next hour, David just sat there talking to her. He told her about his work at the clinic, about the other animals he'd helped, and eventually, it's about Max. It felt strange talking about his old friend, but somehow, with this injured dog looking at him so intently, the words just came out. "Max was a lot like you," David said. "He was smart and loyal, and he had these eyes that seemed to see right into your soul. Got sick last year, and I tried everything to save him. But sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you can't fix everything." The dog lifted her head slightly when he mentioned Max, almost like she understood. As the night went on, David noticed small changes. The dog's breathing became less rapid. Her shivering slowly stopped as the warmth from the fireplace spread. Through the room, around 3 in the morning, she finally took a few laps of water. David felt a surge of hope. "That's it, girl. You're going to be okay." The dog still wouldn't eat. David tried everything, different types of food, feeding her by hand, even mixing the food with warm water to make it easier to swallow. Nothing worked. She would just look at the food, then look back at him, as if she was trying to tell him something. Finally, David lay down on the couch near her makeshift bed. He was exhausted, and his back was sore from sitting on the floor for hours. As he closed his eyes, he heard a soft sound. The dog was moving. David opened his eyes and saw her slowly, carefully getting up. She limped over to the water bowl and drank some more. Then, to his amazement, she walked over to the food plate and took a small bite. "Good girl," David whispered, not wanting to startle her, but the most surprising thing happened next. After eating a few more bites, the dog looked at David lying on the couch. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly limped over to him. She didn't jump up on the couch, but she lay down on the floor right next to it, close enough that David could reach down and touch her. David slowly extended his hand. The dog tensed up for a second, then relaxed as his fingers gently touched her head. Her fur was still dirty and matted, but underneath all that, David could feel that she was a beautiful dog. "You're safe now," David whispered. "I promise you're safe." For the first time in months, David felt something other than sadness. As he drifted off to sleep with this rescued dog nearby, he realized that maybe, just maybe, they were both exactly where they needed to be. The dog seemed to sense his peaceful mood. She let out a small, contented sigh and closed her eyes too. Outside, the storm was still raging, but inside David's living room, two broken souls had found a moment of peace. Together, when morning came, everything would change. David woke up to sunlight streaming through his living room windows. The storm had finally stopped, and everything outside was covered in a thick blanket of white snow. For a moment, he forgot about the events of the night before. Then he looked down and saw her. The dog was still lying on the floor next to his couch, but she was awake and watching him. Her dark eyes looked brighter than they had the night before, and David could see intelligence there that he hadn't noticed in the darkness and chaos of the storm. "Good morning, girl," David said softly, sitting up slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "How are you feeling?" The dog's tail moved slightly. Not quite a wag, but a small sign that she was feeling a bit better. David noticed that she had finished all the food he'd left for her, and the water bowl was nearly empty. "You were hungry after all?" David smiled. "Let me get you some more food." When David stood up, the dog immediately got to her feet too, though she was still favoring her injured paw. She followed him to the kitchen, staying about 6 feet behind him. David could feel her watching his every move. As David prepared fresh food and water, he talked to her. "I think we should give you a name, don't you? Can't just keep calling you girl forever." The dog tilted her head slightly, as if she was considering this idea. "How about Luna?" David said, remembering how he'd found her in the moonlight during the storm. "Do you like that name?" The dog's ears perked up slightly, and David took that as a good sign. After breakfast, David knew he needed to take a closer look at Luna's injuries. He had some medical supplies at home, but if her wounds were serious, they'd need to go to the clinic. "Okay, Luna," David said, sitting down on the floor near her. "I need to check your paw. I promise I'll be gentle." Luna seemed to understand. She limped over to him and carefully laid down, extending her injured paw toward him. David was amazed by how trusting she was becoming. The cut on her paw was deep but clean. David cleaned it carefully and wrapped it with gauze. Luna whimpered once or twice, but she didn't try to pull away. "You're being so brave," David told her. "This should help it heal faster." Over the next few days, David and Luna settled into a routine. Every morning, David would wake up to find Luna lying near his couch, watching him. They'd have breakfast together, and then David would change the bandage on her paw. David had taken a few days off work to help Luna adjust. He noticed that she was gaining weight quickly, and her fur was starting to look healthier after the baths he'd given her. But more importantly, she was starting to trust him. Luna would follow David around the house, always staying a few feet behind him. She never got too close, but she never let him out of her sight either. At mealtimes, she would eat while David sat nearby, and she always seemed to eat better when he was talking to her. The most touching moment came on the third day. David was sitting on his couch reading when Luna approached him. She had never come this close before. Very slowly, she placed her head on his knee and looked up at him. David felt his heart swell. "Hey there, beautiful girl," he said, gently stroking her head. "Are you starting to feel at home?" Luna's tail wagged for the first time since he'd found her. It was just a small wag, but it was enough to bring tears to David's eyes. That evening, David's neighbor knocked on his door. Mrs. Chen was an elderly woman who lived next door and had known David for years. She had been worried about him since Max died, always checking to make sure he was eating and taking care of himself. "David, dear," Mrs. Chen said when he opened the door. "I've been hearing a dog in your house. Did you get a new pet?" David looked back at Luna, who was hiding behind the couch, peeking out at the visitor. "Not exactly," David said. "I found her during the storm. She was hurt and scared." Mrs. Chen's face softened. "Oh, the poor thing. How is she doing?" "Much better," David said. "She's starting to trust me." Mrs. Chen smiled. "You know, David, I haven't seen you look this happy in months. Taking care of her is good for you." David realized she was right. For the first time since Max died, he was waking up with a sense of purpose. He had someone depending on him again, someone who needed his care and attention. After Mrs. Chen left, David sat down on his couch. Luna came over and, for the first time, jumped up onto the couch beside him. She was still careful not to get too close, but she was on the same level as him now. "You're getting braver," David said, reaching over to pet her gently. "I'm proud of you." Luna looked at him with those intelligent eyes, and David could swear she understood every word he said. That night, instead of sleeping on the floor, Luna curled up on the other end of the couch. David woke up several times during the night just to make sure she was still there. Each time he found her sleeping peacefully, and each time he felt a little bit of the emptiness in his heart filling up again. David was beginning to realize that maybe Luna hadn't just found a home with him. Maybe he had found something he needed to, a reason to smile again, a reason to look forward to each new day. But their biggest test was still to come. 3 weeks had passed since David found Luna, and life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Luna's paw had healed completely, and she had gained enough weight to look like a healthy, beautiful dog. Her coat was now shiny and soft, and she had started playing with the old toys that David had kept from Max's time. David was at the clinic that Tuesday morning when his assistant handed him a piece of paper. "Someone called about a lost dog," she said. "The description sounds like it might match Luna." David's heart sank as he read the note. The caller's name was Tom. He was looking for a German Shepherd mix named Bella, who had been lost during a car accident 2 months ago. The description was detailed right down to the small scar above her left eye that David had noticed on Luna. For a moment, David just stared at the paper. He had always known this day might come, but he had hoped it wouldn't. Luna had become such an important part of his life. She greeted him every morning with excited tail wags, followed him around the house, and slept on his couch every night. The thought of losing her felt like losing Max all over again, but David knew he had to do the right thing. If Luna really was this man's dog, then she belonged with her original family. With heavy steps, David walked to his office and dialed the number. "Hello, this is Tom," a voice answered on the second ring. "Hi, this is Dr. David Martinez from Chicago Animal Care," David said, his voice tight. "I got your message about your lost dog." "Yes." Tom's voice was filled with hope. "Did you find her? She okay?" David explained how he had found Luna during the storm and how he had been caring for her. Tom listened quietly, and David could hear him getting emotional. "I've been looking for her everywhere," Tom said, his voice breaking. "I never gave up hope, but it's been so long. Is she really okay?" "She's healthy and happy," David said, though the words felt like rocks in his throat. "Would you like to come see her?"
Oh.
They arranged to meet at David's house that evening. David spent the rest of the day at work trying to focus on his patients. But his mind kept drifting to Luna. How would she react to seeing her original owner? Would she remember him? Would she want to go back? When David got home, Luna greeted him at the door as usual, tail wagging and eyes bright with joy. David knelt down and hugged her, breathing in her familiar scent. "Luna, girl," he said softly, "someone's coming to see you tonight. Someone who says he knows you." Luna tilted her head as if she was trying to understand what he was saying. At 7 o'clock, David heard a car door slam outside. He looked out the window and saw a man in his 40s walking up to his front door. The man looked tired and hopeful at the same time. David opened the door before Tom could knock. "Be Tom," he said, extending his hand. "Yes, and you must be David," Tom replied, shaking his hand. Thank you so much for taking care of her. I can't tell you how much this means to me. Tom stepped into the living room, and Luna immediately froze. She was lying on her favorite spot on the couch, but when she saw Tom, her whole body went rigid. Her ears went back, and she made a small whimpering sound. "Bella?" Tom said softly, taking a step forward. "Bella, it's me. It's Tom." Luna's reaction was not what David had expected. Instead of running to Tom with joy, she jumped off the couch and moved behind David, pressing herself against his legs. She was shaking slightly, and David could feel her tension. Tom's face fell. "She doesn't remember me," he said quietly. "Maybe. She just needs time," David said, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. "She's been through a lot." Tom sat down on the floor and called to Luna gently. "Come here, girl. Don't you remember our walks in the park? Remember how you used to sleep on my bed?" Luna peeked out from behind David, but didn't move toward Tom. Instead, she looked up at David with those trusting eyes, as if asking him to protect her. David felt his heart breaking. He could see the pain in Tom's eyes, but he could also feel Luna's fear and confusion. This was the hardest situation he had ever faced. "Tell me about the accident," David said gently, sitting down in his chair. Luna immediately came and sat beside him, staying close. Tom's eyes filled with tears. "We were driving to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. A drunk driver hit us from the side. I was unconscious for 3 days, and when I woke up, the police told me that Bella had run away from the accident scene. I've been looking for her ever since." David watched Luna as Tom spoke. She seemed to recognize something in his voice, but she still wouldn't go near him. "I think she's scared," David said carefully. "The accident probably traumatized her. And then being alone on the streets for so long, she might not trust easily anymore." Tom nodded sadly. "I can see that she's bonded with you," she looked sad. "You the way she used to look at me." They sat in silence for a few minutes, all three of them trying to figure out what to do. Luna had curled up next to David's chair, but she kept watching Tom with wary eyes. Finally, Tom spoke again. "I can see how much you love her, and how much she trusts you. Maybe what's best for Bella isn't what I want, but what she needs." David looked down at Luna, who was now resting her head on his foot. The decision that would change all their lives was about to be made. The room was quiet except for the sound of Luna's gentle breathing. David looked at Tom, then down at Luna, who was still pressed against his leg. He could feel the weight of the decision they all had to make. "Tom," David said carefully, "I can see how much you love her. But I also think Luna needs time to remember you. Maybe we shouldn't rush this." Tom wiped his eyes and nodded. "You're right. I've been so focused on finding her that I didn't think about how scared she must be." He looked at Luna with sad but understanding eyes. "I just want her to be happy." Over the next hour, Tom shared stories about his life with Luna when she was Bella. He told David about how he had rescued her as a puppy from a shelter, how she used to wake him up every morning by bringing him his slippers, and how she would sit by the window waiting for him to come home from work. As Tom talked, something interesting happened. Luna's ears perked up at certain words. When Tom mentioned car rides, her tail moved slightly. When he talked about the park, she lifted her head. She was remembering, but she was still too scared to show it fully. "She does remember you," David said softly. "Look at her body language. She's just afraid." Tom's face lit up with hope. "Really? You think so?" "I know so," David said. "But I think we need to take this slow. Rushing her won't help anyone." Tom thought for a moment, then said something that surprised David. What if I don't take her back right away? If we figure out a way for her to get comfortable with me again first." David felt a mix of relief and confusion. "What do you mean? I mean, she's happy here with you? She's healthy and safe? Maybe I could visit her regularly, help her remember me gradually. And if she ever feels ready to come home with me, then we can talk about it." David stared at Tom in amazement. "You would do that, even though she's legally your dog?" Tom smiled. "Sadly, David, I've spent 2 months searching for her because I love her. If I really love her, then I want what's best for her, not what's best for me." That evening, they made a plan. Tom would visit Luna twice a week, taking her on short walks. and spending time with her in David's backyard. This would give Luna time to remember Tom without the pressure of having to leave the safe home she had built with David. The first few visits were awkward. Luna would hide behind David when Tom arrived, and she would only come out when David sat between them. But gradually, things started to change. By the third visit, Luna allowed Tom to pet her while David was nearby. By the fifth visit, she took a treat from his hand. And by the eighth visit, something magical happened. Tom was sitting in David's backyard, talking quietly to Luna when she suddenly got up and walked over to him. She sniffed his hand, then gently placed her head on his knee, the same gesture she had first made with David weeks earlier. "She remembers," Tom whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She remembers me." David watched from his kitchen window, and he felt his own eyes fill with tears. He was happy for Tom, but he also felt a deep sadness. Was this the moment he would lose Luna? But Tom surprised him again. When David came outside, Tom looked up at him and said, "I think we need to talk." They sat together on David's porch while Luna played in the yard, chasing a ball that Tom had brought her. "David," Tom began, "I can see how much you two love each other, and I can see how much she's changed since I found her. She's more confident, more playful. You've given her something I couldn't. You helped her heal from her trauma." David wasn't sure where this conversation was going. Tom continued, "I've been thinking about this a lot. I work long hours and I travel for business sometimes. Luna would be alone a lot if she came back to me. But here, with you, she has someone who understands animals. Someone who can give her the attention she needs." "What are you saying?" David asked. "I'm saying that maybe the best thing for Luna is to stay with you. But I'd like to be part of her life, if that's okay. Like an uncle, maybe. I could visit her, take her on adventures sometimes, but she would live here with you." David felt his heart skip a beat. "Are you sure?" "She was your dog first." Tom smiled. "She was my dog, yes. Now she's your dog too. And more importantly, she's chosen you. I can see it in the way she looks at you, the way she follows you around. She loves me, but she trusts you. And after what she's been through, trust is more important than anything." That night, after Tom had left, David sat on his couch with Luna beside him. She was resting her head on his lap, looking up at him with those intelligent, loving eyes. "So girl," David said, scratching behind her ears, "looks like you're stuck with me." Luna's tail wagged, and she made a soft sound that almost sounded like contentment. 6 months later, David's life had completely changed. Luna had helped him rediscover his love for life. Together, they started volunteering at the local animal shelter, helping other scared and abandoned animals find their courage again. Tom kept his promise and visited regularly. He and David had become good friends, bonded by their shared love for Luna. Sometimes the three of them would go hiking together. Luna would run between both men, happy to have two humans who loved her. David realized that sometimes the best families aren't the ones you're born into, but the ones you choose. Sometimes love means letting go, but it can also mean coming together in ways you never expected. Luna had taught them all that healing takes time, the trust is earned, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is simply being there when they need you most.